Unsolved.
The Zodiac Killer Case. Persons of Interest. So this video is picking up after the last video about the murder of Paul Stine, and we're going to look at 4 individuals. This individual is the person whose parents lived at 3712 Jackson, and Officer Folk saw an individual head up the stairs towards the front door there. Now, Robert was born on June 2nd, 1924, and his mother remarried, and so his name was changed to Robert Newton Bloch. But his birth name is Robert N. Hutchings. His biological father was Hartley Frank Hutchings, and he died on June 28, 1962. And here's his information from his military registration card. He's white, 6'1", 155 pounds, brown hair. Sometimes the registration card is filled out by the individual. So if you look at the top right there, order number, it looks like that's in different handwriting. But the name and place of residence and even the telephone and other information looks like it was written out by him. So if we compare that writing to the car door, we can see if there's any similarities there. And then I also found this on the internet, and it looks like it might have been written by him. So we can compare the writing there. And also the envelope from the murderer of Sherry Jo Bates. We can compare the handwriting there and see if there's any similarities. And last but not least, a side-by-side comparison of his photograph to the sketch of the Zodiac Killer. Paul von Hafften is our next person of interest, and he's the younger brother of that house where the taxi cab driver was killed, right in front of there, marked in dark red right there. And he was kind of into riding on old trains, and so here's a newsletter with his name and address and where you can buy a ticket. And that was a block or so west of the crime scene where he lived there up until 1968. But then he moved to the east several blocks by 1969. Here's a copy of Paul's certificate of death, and it has his usual residence, and then it also shows his brother's address, and that he died on September 11th, 1978. And here's the back of his military registration card, where his race is listed as white, his height is 5 feet, 8.5 inches tall, his weight 165, and his hair brown. And here's a side-by-side look at him compared to the sketch of the Zodiac Killer. Now, if you look closely at this record of death of Paul Lee Stine, on the bottom right down there, you can see Michael Conway, who lived in San Mateo, that he identified the body. And so I thought we would investigate him. So this newspaper article from, I believe, the 1950s said that he worked at this corporate office. So maybe Paul Stine sold that insurance for him. Or another possible connection is Colleen, age 10 there. Again, this is old. She went to San Francisco State College. So maybe she was going to college at the same time as Paul, and then somehow he knew her dad. So looking at the phone book, here's his address in 1973, and it's the same address that's listed on that death certificate or whatever it is, death notice. And here again is that side by side. A look at Michael Conway compared to the sketch of the Zodiac killer. So do you remember the murder of Ray Davis in 1962 in Oceanside, California? His estranged wife is Marian Solomon. And so I thought I would look into her background a little bit. Now there's a lot of similarities to the murder of Paul Stine to the murder of Raymond Davis. He was a taxi cab driver who was shot in the back of the head. But not only that, the person that did it called the police before the murder, and then he called the police again after the murder and said, "Do you remember me calling you last week and telling you that I'm going to pull a real baffling crime? I killed the cab driver, and I'm going to get me a bus driver next." So I think this graphic shows that the killer caught the cab down here in the south part and then drove up that 8-minute drive, about a mile and a half, to the back alley where the mayor and the ex-mayor of Oceanside lived, and he shot him in the back of the head right there. And here's a side-by-side look at her compared to the sketch of the Zodiac killer. Maybe the Zodiac killer's not a he, but a she. And she said that that's not what she looks like when she's in her disguise. So who is Marilyn Woods? Well, this killer, they killed the taxi cab driver in Oceanside, Raymond Davis. He called her, and she lived at 116 Wisconsin Avenue. And he said, "Call police and tell them I'm going to kill that bus driver tonight." So I've tried to figure out who that person is, and I haven't been able to find that person. And I've been searching for hours and hours trying to find a photograph of her and any information about her. So here would be a side-by-side comparison of the sketch of the Zodiac killer and her. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved. And I've been looking for information on those two ladies. Ray Davis's estranged wife, because she lived in Pomona at the time. And that Marilyn Woods, who the killer called. And that's what's held up this video, because I haven't been able to find anything to put in this episode. So I'll let you know later. See ya.